Remember that time when the UN was like, maybe we should be paying attention to human rights? Italy won the World Cup in Germany, and Disney began its crusade to own every other successful movie studio. Today I'm talking about that one from 2006, A Scanner Darkly. This has got to be low-key one of my favorite movies of all time. For anyone that's unaware, this is based on a book by Philip K. Dick, who had to be one of the greatest sci-fi writers of the 20th century. His works are pretty much the basis for a large portion of modern sci-fi, including movies like Blade Runner. Now, the thing about PKD is that his work was kinda pulpy.
Man, this is terrible.
So while his ideas and premises are some of the best around, you don't often hear them on the list of great sci-fi literature with the likes of Asimov or Vonnegut. But that is precisely why his stories make for such great adaptations, in my opinion. There are great ideas and characters, but they might not be realized fully in the original novel. So great screenwriters and directors can come around and add their own twists and flourishes, which only serve to improve upon the established base. Enter A Scanner Darkly. The first thing that would jump out to most in the audience is the animation. The film was done entirely in rotoscope, which has improved dramatically since those Lord of the Rings monkeys from the 70s. As the actors and camera move about the scenes, the colors sort of shift and move, which gives the animation this neat sort of 3D effect. I do think there are a few instances where they could have more finely honed the coloring. The picture can tend to sort of flicker a bit too much when there's a lot of movement in frame. Overall, though, the animation adds to this sort of trippy, drug-fueled haze that most of our main characters are going through, and helps to sell what might have been some iffy effects in live action, like the changed suits or the swarm of bugs crawling on a character's skin in the early scenes.
Okay.
As the story progresses, we also start to deal with issues of mistaken identity, dissociation, and questions about what's real. Since a lot of these questions are raised by literally changing actors in and out of scenes, the answers might have seemed a bit too definitive in live action. I really like the montage of CCTV footage as the two characters are on a mission to make their own cocaine as well. There are some really interesting shots, and it sets up the universe and shows the audience the police state the characters are living in very succinctly. It also serves to set up the idea of scanners that feature in the latter stages of the movie. The script incorporates the source material in some really cool ways, like the scene of Freck's suicide attempt, which takes whole swaths of the book text and presents them as a radio announcer narrating his actions and state of mind.
Decided finally to off himself. There was no problem in the circles where he hung out in putting an end to yourself. You just bought a large quantity of downers and took them with some cheap wine.
The performances are all great. The only one I'm not super into is Freck, but mostly because I think it comes off kind of a little too cartoonish.
A lot of problems nobody else has.
I get that he's supposed to be the one that's a bit too drug-addled to pass off as normal functioning, but considering the rest of the script deals with drug addiction in a very sympathetic way, he's just over the line into too much.
Well, I like it.
Robert Downey Jr. is amazing in this role, keeping in mind that this movie is coming back at the beginning of RDJ's reclamation.
Total providence.
He was still a year out from Zodiac and 2 years away from Iron Man. He just kills the subtle sliminess of Barris, as well as the philosopher stoner archetype that I think everyone has gotten high with before.
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. I kind of have to tip my hat to any entity that could bring so much integrity to evil.
As much as I love Keanu in general, there is definitely something to be said about how he really plays his characters very simply. That said, similar to playing a role like John Wick, his stoicism works very well in this picture. He serves as an easy entryway for the audience into a world of some pretty big personalities. He's the friend that gets high, sits back, listens, and contemplates life. It also helps that we will soon find out he's also slowly going brain dead because of the drugs, which is honestly not a dig. It really sells the more subdued performance.
I hope so.
Winona and Woody also do a great job here, even if their characters are a little more one note. They're probably the least focused on of the core cast, so they basically get to only play the spaced out stoner, but they never detract from scenes.
I just simply never know with you. Is he fucking with us, Bob?
I really love the humor in this movie. The characters all play off each other really well, and the scenes let the funny moments really breathe. There's a 3-minute scene that's solely about how many gears a mountain bike has, and it's brilliant. You really get the vibe that you're sitting at a party and overhearing a group of idiots having a conversation about something useless.
Why do you say it's an 18 speed when it only has 9 gears?
These scenes play out like funny little skits. They help to establish the characters and their relationships with each other, while at the same time also sprinkling plot information in ever so subtly.
All right. All right.
The script takes what on initial viewing seems like fairly standard junkie talk and leaves hints about the mysteries that the plot is actually attempting to solve, without the audience knowing it at the time.
I once talked to this dealer who'd been busted. I asked him what the narc who busted him looked like.
What do you say? Look, just like us?
I love the way that drug addiction is handled with care in this movie. It's a very easy thing to overlook, but one of the most important aspects in the book is that we're supposed to feel empathy for these characters. It's somewhat autobiographical after all. Sure, there's allusions to the sort of loose friendships that drug addiction can foster, but those are mostly centered on Barris, who seems to be kind of a sociopath.
You ready?
Yeah, what do you want? Come on, Hammer. Shut up! Make a move. Don't like it.
Keanu has this great monologue about his house and how it used to be home to a family, but how that overwhelming, monotonous life is what drove him to drugs and seeking out new experiences. We're given insight into why this character has ended up where he is and what's gotten him to this point in life.
Nothing new could ever be expected.
At the end of the movie, the cops have a debrief about what's taken place to get Keanu's character to that point, about the human cost of their plan to get him addicted. You can basically just read the complete interaction as a simile for society's views on drug addicts and how many people are okay with blaming the addicts and chalking it up to their own failures. It's a surprisingly nuanced look at addiction.
It's just such a cost to pay.
I remember reading The Giver in school as a kid, and at the end we were all so happy the main character made it to freedom. And then our teacher posited, or is it possible that he died on the journey, and him making it to the village is just his death?
I have a hunch from what you're saying that he is.
Now, I'm not saying that that's some great literature or anything, but it was my first experience with the idea of nuanced storytelling that's open to interpretation. On first viewing for the majority of the movie, everything seems fairly straightforward. Keanu's character is an undercover cop attempting to find a link to the higher-ups in the Substance D pipeline. As he continues to take the drugs and blend in, he begins to become an addict and essentially ruin his brain. When we see scenes where people's appearance change right before his eyes, we've been told already that this is a well-known impairment from using too much of the drug.
If you show a run of not getting it, then we have a fix on a functional impairment and we dry you out for a while.
But once we see the cops debrief at the end of the movie and see the payoff of their plan overall, the question can be raised about whether they've intentionally worsened the dissociation that Bob is experiencing. The conversation at the end of the movie has neither of the undercover cops wearing scramble suits.
How does he look?
Are the scramble suits a real measure that the police use, or is this to further destroy the subject's idea of self? What's real and who's who? Bob thinks he sees characters turn into other characters, and we see it as just an effect of the drugs. But when he sees the same transformation on an objective video, are we seeing the depths to which his mind has been addled, or are we seeing something purposefully tampered with? It would seem that Winona's character implicitly admits that was in fact a part of their plan, but perhaps she's talking in the broader sense of putting Arctur into the situation while knowing there was a strong potential he would become an addict for this end.
Yeah, but to sacrifice someone, a living person, without them ever knowing it.
Maybe we as the audience want there to be a conspiracy because this is our protagonist, while in reality they were simply playing the odds that Bob might become an addict.
Arctur? Yeah, he doesn't
Seem to be doing much.
The audience is shown a sympathetic character in Bob Arctur. We're introduced to him as a cop, doing what he can to get a dangerous drug off the streets. And slowly we learn that he's really two people, the man he was and the man that he has become. When he's instructed to concentrate his investigation on himself, he sees him as another person.
I know Bob Arctur. He's a good person. He's up to nothing.
His monologue fully breaks the moment that he enters the front door of his house. He goes from a cop who's thinking about the nature of Bob and what he needs to do in the investigation to Bob, who somehow knows that he's being watched but wonders if a scanner can truly see who a person is, about what's in their soul.
What does a scanner see? Into the head? Down into the heart? Does it see into me?
You were unconscious.
You're the only person in the known universe who never heard of the Heimlich maneuver?
All right, I'm going to give you a little feedback since you seem to be proceeding through life like a cat without whiskers perpetually caught behind the refrigerator.
It's a kind of shame that Robert Downey Jr. got so big as Iron Man and will probably never play another bad guy again. He's so likable but disgusting in this movie. I think we got through an entire Keanu movie without a whoa.